too. Okay. Without God as our ultimate source, we believe that man doesn't have a standard that is appropriate for judging actions in regard to his morality. In other words, without a standard, there can be no justice. Without absolutes, there can be no morality. The absolutes of God's Word have stood the test of history as the standard for moral order and real values. If there are no absolutes beyond man's ideas, then there's no final field to judge between individuals and groups whose moral judgments are in conflict. We're merely left with conflicting opinions and flawed conclusions. Ethical relativism leaves man with no standards, only subjective value judgments that translate themselves many times into no morality. Because of the fall of man and the resulting sin that entered into the world, man must be strengthened by a virtuous and perfect God. His absolute goodness is an answer in direct contrast to man's unleashed human desires and his desire to fulfill the works of the flesh, even at the cost of others many times. Historically, nations have risen and fallen into a cycle of deterioration that has spiraled mankind into human peril due to unrestrained and selfish freefall dictated by this kind of self-pursuit. This has given us a consistent need and a comfort to return to a divine plan of God as our remedy. Examples of selfish and destructive moral laws can be what we see in the world today as polluting our environment, or disease that runs rampant and is perpetrated on others, or deception for the sake of greed and gain. These continued deteriorations lead wise men to seek answers that call for divine intervention that are greater than the resources of man. This does not alleviate man's responsibility to take his place of righteous leadership in the world. It reinforces our strength to accomplish great things through God, who is altogether powerful, perfect, and creative, and can make man accomplish things beyond what he normally would be able to do. I find comfort in the divine command theory when it is applied to morals and virtues.
Okay, David? There have been numerous examples of virtuous people who lack belief in a personal God. There have also been numerous examples of theists who live very unethical lives. Contrary to popular conception, there is no evidence that theists are any more law-abiding, civil, just, or ethical than non-theists. Authoritarianism may be a necessary approach for very young children who are learning discipline and can't yet comprehend ideas about right and wrong. But humanists believe that real morality, real virtue, cannot come from the extortion of punishments or threats of suffering. We believe that ethical values can't be properly understood if they are represented merely as authoritative edicts without appreciation of exactly how and why and moral character is important for human well-being. Humanists believe that when a person is raised to view morality merely as obedience, they miss out on a more mature understanding of moral excellence as part of a healthy, happy, passionate human life. Such a mythological view of the world seems to repress that deeper understanding of morality and keep the theist at a childlike level of moral maturity. For the humanist, then, the real question becomes, is it really possible to lead a morally virtuous life with a belief in such things?
I think as a free thinker, obviously, that we can lead ethical and moral lives as human beings living amongst others of various faiths. And a very valid point was brought up. Where do we derive our standards for our ethical life? Where do the moral senses and principles that we go forth into the world with come from? There are three main forces that guide our ethical standards. There are the laws of nature, the forces of cultures, and the contingencies of history. All of these being evolved as part of natural selection. Natural selection being that the most effective one bonds, thrive, and survive. And as such, these principles don't exist within me. They don't exist within any single person. They are outside of the individual person. In a sense, they transcend individual humans and belong instead to the species of human. And once again, it's the forces of evolution, how those standards evolve throughout the hundreds of thousands of years of our development, the individual historical events that took place during that evolution, and the cultures that they have come out of. So therefore, I mean, the free thought morality is a form, obviously, of social control, and it ensures the survival of not only me as an individual, but us as a group and as a species. So that leads us into what we call our provisional morality. And if you want to know what an act is, if it's moral or immoral, we apply several principles. One of them is the act's first principle. If you want to know if something is going to hurt someone, it's an act's first principle. It's kind of a derivation of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But sometimes you don't always know if they want that done unto them. So you ask first. The second one is the happiness principle. Always act in a way that increases the happiness, not only yourself or others. And the third is the liberty principle. Trying to take actions that increase liberty rather than decrease liberty. But when I say provisional morality, I think we have to divert ourselves from absolute morality and say that these principles apply to most people in most circumstances, in most cultures, most of the time. And on the subject of who judges us, and there being no absolute ultimate judges, I disagree. Because we all face judges that are transcendent and powerful in their own way. We face our family, we face our friends, we face our colleagues, we face our peers. At the Houston Church of Free Thought, I stand up and I face the judgment of my parishioners. We stand before our judges and our actions in the here and the now, not in the hereafter. Because it's real people that are affected by my actions and whose actions affect me. So that is the basis for free thought morality.
Okay, and shall we finish the question?
Yes, the question was brought up, where do we derive the moral standards from? I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. For a Muslim, from an Islamic perspective, the moral standards are derived from, like I said, the Quran, and God is the ultimate destination, the ultimate desire for a believer to attain salvation, to, in common words, to be good in His book. So anytime a person is morally virtuous without God, his life is, so to speak, without a purpose. Because if you're only fulfilling the moral requirements that are expected of you, the moral expectations for other people, then like it's mentioned, it is only here and it is only now, and that is a sort of a hollow life without having any expectations of the hereafter or anything of the divine. So morally virtuous life without God, a lot of people have different moral standards. So what happens when you come across a question or a moral dilemma where you are not able to figure out which is right and which is wrong? So at that point, the comfort of God being on your side is a great comfort on its own. And when you are morally virtuous, whether it be a small deed as being kind to your neighbor, or feeding the animals, or being a law-abiding citizen from smaller scale to a larger scale, anytime you are a morally virtuous person, the reason and the objective is so that you do good to God's creation, so that God may be happy with you and do good unto you.
Okay, great. Next question.